3 days had passed since the Battle of Hana 7. The fires were finally out. The dead had been buried. The wounded were healing. The survivors were beginning to rebuild. Commander Taiho stood on the same observation deck where he had watched the sun rise before the invasion. The view was different now. Many buildings were destroyed. The fields were scarred with craters from the bombardment. But the colony was still alive. The people were still here. And that was all that mattered. Admiral Yuna walked up beside him. She had stayed after the battle to oversee the relief efforts. Hundreds of supply ships had arrived from other human colonies, bringing food, medicine, and construction materials. Engineers were already working to repair the power station and communication center. "How are you feeling, Commander?" Yuna asked. Taiho was quiet for a moment. He thought about everything that had happened. The fear when he first saw the alien fleet. The desperation when he pressed the SOS button. The long hours of fighting, not knowing if help would come. And finally, the overwhelming relief when human warships appeared in the sky. "I am tired," he admitted. "But I am alive. My people are alive. That is more than I expected." Yuna nodded. "You did well. Your security team held this colony for over 3 hours against 100 enemy ships. Military academies will study what you did here." Taiho shook his head. "We just did what any human would do. We fought. We survived. We protected our family." "That is exactly my point," Yuna said. The Velrith did not understand that. They thought we were weak because we are small. They did not know that our strength comes from somewhere they cannot see. It comes from here. She touched her chest, over her heart. Down in the colony center, the people were gathering for a memorial ceremony. They wanted to honor those who had died defending their home. 12 security officers had fallen in the battle. They were heroes, every one of them. Taiho and Yuna walked down to join the gathering. The crowd parted to let them through. People reached out to touch Taiho's hand, to thank him, to tell him how grateful they were. He nodded to each of them, but he could not find words to speak. Captain Sahi was there too, standing with her soldiers. Many of them had bandages on their arms and legs. A few walked with crutches, but they all stood straight and proud. Jiwoo stood near the front of the crowd. Her arm was in a sling from an injury she had received during the attack, but she was smiling. She had stayed at her post in the communication center until the very end, sending updates to the fleet, guiding rescue teams to trap civilians. She had been braver than she ever knew she could be. Lieutenant Minho had also come down from the fleet. His face still showed cuts from his battle in space, and he walked slowly because of his healing ribs. But he wanted to be here. He wanted to stand with the people he had helped save. The ceremony was simple. An old man from the colony read the names of the fallen. After each name, the crowd spoke together. "We remember." 12 names. 12 heroes. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. When the ceremony ended, Taiho climbed onto a small platform to speak. He had never been good at speeches. He was a soldier, not a politician. But these were his people, and they deserved to hear from him. 3 days ago, we were attacked, he began. 100 enemy warships came to destroy us. They were confident of victory. They thought we would fall easily. They were wrong. The crowd listened in silence. We fought back. Not because we thought we could win, but because that is what humans do. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We protect our families, our homes, our children. Even when the odds are impossible, we find a way to survive. He paused and looked at Admiral Yuna, at Captain Sahi, at all the soldiers who had come to save them. "We are not alone in this galaxy," he continued. "We have brothers and sisters across the stars who will come when we call." The Deathworlders fleet answered our SOS in our darkest hour. They reminded us what it means to be human. They reminded us that we are never truly alone. Tears were flowing down many faces in the crowd now. These were tears of grief for those they had lost, but also tears of relief and gratitude. To our enemies, I say this: we are not weak. We are not afraid. We came from a planet that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We survived storms, predators, diseases, and disasters that would destroy any other species. We are Deathworlders, and we will never stop fighting for our own. The crowd erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Far away, in the heart of the Velrith Empire, Admiral Korath stood before the High Council. He had returned with only 30 ships from his original fleet of 100. The greatest defeat in Velrith history. The council members stared at him with cold eyes. They were furious. They were confused. They demanded explanations. How did this happen? The High Chancellor asked. They were just humans. Small, fragile creatures. How did they defeat you? Korath had thought about this question for 3 days. He had watched recordings of the battle over and over. He had analyzed every moment, every decision, every failure. We underestimated them, he said finally. We saw their size and thought they were weak. We saw their soft bodies and thought they would break easily. But we were wrong. They are not weak. They are the strongest species I have ever encountered. The council members murmured in surprise. Their planet is a death world, Korath continued. Everything there is designed to kill. The gravity, the weather, the animals, the diseases. They should have died long ago. Instead, they evolved. They became something terrifying. They became survivors. He paused, remembering the battle. Remembering the human pilots who flew damaged ships back into combat. Remembering the soldiers who fought with wounds that should have been fatal. Remembering the civilians who refused to surrender even when they had no hope. They do not stop, Korath said. That is what makes them dangerous. Any other species would retreat, would give up, would accept defeat. But humans do not know how to quit. They will fight until their last breath. They will sacrifice everything to protect each other. And when you hurt one of them, all of them come for revenge. The High Chancellor leaned forward. Are you saying we should fear these creatures? Korath met his eyes without flinching. I am saying we should never attack them again. I am saying that if we continue this war, we will lose. Not because they have more ships or bigger weapons, but because they have something we do not understand. Something that makes them fight beyond all reason, beyond all logic, beyond all limits. The council was silent. This was not what they had expected to hear. Back on Colony Hana 7. The sun had set. The memorial ceremony was over. People were returning to their shelters to rest. Admiral Yuna stood with Commander Taiho one last time before returning to her ship. What will you do now? She asked. Taiho looked at the stars above. They seemed brighter than before. More beautiful. More full of possibility. We will rebuild, he said. We will make this colony stronger than it was. And we will remember. We will remember the ones we lost. We will remember the ones who saved us. And we will remember what we learned about ourselves. Yuna smiled. And what did you learn? Taiho thought about it. He thought about the fear he had felt and the courage he had found. He thought about his security team, standing firm against impossible odds. He thought about the ordinary farmers and scientists who had become heroes. I learned that being human is not about being the biggest or the strongest, he said. It is about never giving up. It is about fighting for what matters. It is about being there for each other, no matter what. Yuna nodded. That is why we survive. That is why we will always survive. She shook his hand one final time, then walked toward her transport. As her ship lifted into the sky, Taiho watched it go. The fleet would leave tomorrow, returning to their patrols across the galaxy. But they would always be ready. They would always answer the call. The Velroth had been confident of victory. They had learned a painful lesson about what it meant to face the Deathworlders, and somewhere in the galaxy, other alien empires were hearing the story. They were learning about the small creatures from the death world called Earth. They were learning about their impossible courage, their endless endurance, their unbreakable spirit. They were learning to be afraid. Commander Taiho turned and walked back toward the colony. There was work to do. There was a home to rebuild. And there were children to protect. The humans of Hana 7 would survive. They always survived. That was what being a Deathworlder meant. Captain Sahi jumped from the transport ship before it even touched the ground. Her boots hit the dirt of Colony Hana 7, and she immediately started giving orders. Behind her, 2,000 human soldiers followed. They were the Deathworlders' ground force, the most feared infantry unit in the galaxy. Sahi was 38 years old. She had black hair tied back in a tight braid. Her face was hard and focused. A large scar ran down her right arm from a battle 5 years ago when an alien blade had cut her deeply. She had killed the alien that wounded her, then finished the battle before allowing medics to treat her. "Spread out," she commanded. "First company, secure the Eastern District. Second company, push toward the center. Third company, protect the civilian shelters. Move." Her soldiers moved with perfect discipline. They had trained together for years. They knew each other's movements without needing to speak. Each soldier carried weapons designed for Earth conditions, heavy and powerful. The Velroth had never faced weapons like these before. The Velroth soldiers on the ground quickly realized something was wrong. These new humans were different from the security team they had been fighting. These humans moved faster. They hit harder. They seemed to feel no pain. A Velroth squad of 20 soldiers encountered a human squad of 10. The aliens should have won easily. They were bigger and stronger. But the human soldiers charged directly at them with no fear. They fired their weapons while running, hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. Then they engaged in close combat, using knives and fists when their guns ran empty. Within 3 minutes, all 20 Velroth soldiers were dead. The human squad had lost only 2. How is this possible? A Velroth commander screamed into his radio. "They are smaller than us. They should be weaker." But size was not everything. The humans had grown up on a planet where everything tried to kill them. Their muscles had developed under heavy gravity. Their bones were dense and strong. Their reflexes had evolved to deal with predators that could strike faster than the eye could see. More importantly, humans had something the Velroth could not understand: endurance. The Velroth soldiers were getting tired. They had been fighting for hours. Their energy was fading. They needed rest. The humans did not stop. Captain Sahi led her soldiers through the streets of the colony. They moved from building to building, clearing each one of enemy soldiers. The Velroth tried to set up defensive positions, but the humans found ways around them. They climbed through broken windows. They crawled through tunnels. They appeared from directions the aliens never expected. "Captain," one of her lieutenants reported, "we found civilians trapped in a collapsed building. There are Velroth soldiers guarding them." "How many soldiers?" Sahi asked. "About 50. Sahi looked at her squad. She had 30 soldiers with her. The odds were not good. Any other commander would have waited for reinforcements. Sahi was not any other commander. "We go now," she said. "Those civilians have waited long enough." They attacked the Velroth position like a storm. Sahi was at the front, her rifle blazing. An alien tried to grab her, but she ducked under its arms and shot it in the chest. Another swung a blade at her head. She blocked it with her armored forearm and broke the alien's knee with a powerful kick. Her soldiers fought beside her with the same ferocity. They took wounds that would have killed other species. One soldier named Jaewon was shot in the shoulder. He switched his rifle to his other hand and kept fighting. Another soldier named Myong took a cut to her leg. She wrapped it with a quick bandage and continued the attack. The Valrath could not believe what they were seeing. These creatures should be dying. These creatures should be running away. But they kept coming, kept fighting, kept winning. Within 20 minutes, all 50 Valrath soldiers were defeated. Sahi's team had several wounded but no dead. The civilians were rescued from the collapsed building. Children ran to their parents. Families embraced each other with tears of relief. An old man grabbed Sahi's hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for coming." Sahi nodded. "That is why we are here. No human gets left behind." In space above, the battle had shifted completely. Admiral Korath watched his fleet crumbling around him. More than half his ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet was still fighting at almost full strength. "This is impossible," Korath whispered. "This should not be happening." He had studied humans before this attack. He had read reports about their planet, their biology, their history. The reports could not capture the truth. Reports could not explain the fire that burned in human hearts. "Admiral," his officer said, "we should retreat. We cannot win this battle." Korath's pride fought against the idea. He had never retreated in his life. He had conquered 12 worlds. He was the greatest military commander in the Valrath Empire. But he was also not stupid. He could see the numbers. He could see his ships burning. He could see the human fleet pressing forward without mercy. "Sound the retreat," he ordered. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. "All ships, withdraw." The Valrath fleet began to pull back. But Admiral Yuna was not finished with them. "Do not let them escape easily," she commanded. "Chase them. Make them remember this day." The human fleet pursued the retreating aliens, destroying more ships as they fled. The Valrath formation broke apart as each captain tried to save their own vessel. Panic spread through their ranks. Lieutenant Minho was back in a new fighter, leading his rebuilt squadron in the chase. His wounds had been treated, but he had refused to stay in the medical bay. There was still fighting to be done. "They are running," his wingman said with satisfaction. "Good," Minho replied. "Let them run. Let them tell everyone what happens when you attack humans." On the ground, the Valrath retreat was even more chaotic. Their soldiers ran toward their landing ships, desperate to escape. The human ground forces let most of them go. There was no honor in killing retreating enemies, but Sahi made sure they understood one thing before they left. She stood in the middle of the colony center, surrounded by her soldiers. As the last Valrath transport lifted off, she raised her voice and shouted into the sky, "Go home. Tell your empire what you saw today. Tell them what happens when you attack Earth's children. We are humans. We are Deathworlders. And we will never surrender." Her soldiers cheered behind her. The sound echoed across the colony, reaching the ears of the fleeing aliens. Commander Taiho emerged from the shelters with Jiwoo and the surviving security officers. They were exhausted, wounded, and covered in dirt and blood. But they were alive. Taiho walked to where Sahi was standing. He looked at the burning buildings around them, at the bodies of fallen enemies, at the sky where human warships were still chasing the Valrath. "You came," he said simply. "You actually came." Sahi smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was warm. "Of course we came. You pressed the button. The Deathworlders' fleet always answers." Taiho felt tears forming in his eyes. He had spent hours wondering if help would arrive in time. He had watched his people fight and die to protect the colony. And now it was over. The enemy was gone. His people were safe. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you all." Sahi put a hand on his shoulder. Thank yourself, Commander. You and your security team held this colony for hours against impossible odds. That is what being human means. That is why we survive. Above them, the sun was setting. The sky was filled with smoke and the lights of distant ships. It was not a beautiful sunset, but it was the most beautiful thing Taiho had ever seen. They had survived. They had won. And the Velrath would never forget the day they learned what Deathworlders truly were. The Velrath attack began exactly on time. 100 warships appeared in the sky above Colony Hana 7 like dark clouds blocking the sun. The colonists watched from their underground shelters through security cameras. Children cried. Parents held them close. Everyone prayed. Commander Taiho stood at the entrance of the main shelter with his 50 security officers. They had old rifles and simple body armor. It was nothing compared to what the Velrath had. But they stood firm. They would fight. The first explosions shook the ground. Velrath ships fired their weapons at the colony buildings. The communications center was destroyed in seconds. The power station went next. Fire and smoke filled the air. The beautiful morning became a nightmare. Hold your positions, Taiho ordered through his radio. Remember, help is coming. We just need to survive. Admiral Korath watched the destruction from his flagship with satisfaction. The human settlement was burning. Their buildings were crumbling. Soon, he would send his soldiers to the ground to capture the survivors. It was all going according to plan. Then something strange happened. Admiral, one of his officers said, his voice confused. Our sensors are detecting something. Ships coming out of hyperspace. Korath frowned. Impossible. The nearest human military base is too far away. They cannot be here yet. But the sensors did not lie. One by one, human warships began appearing around the planet. They came from every direction, emerging from hyperspace in flashes of blue light. 10 ships, 20, 50. The number kept growing. Korath watched the screen with growing disbelief. Where had they all come from? How had they arrived so quickly? 200 ships, his officer whispered. Admiral, they have 200 ships. For the first time in his long career, Korath felt something cold in his stomach. It was not fear exactly. Vareth did not feel fear, but it was something close. It does not matter, he said, forcing confidence into his voice. We still outnumber their larger ships. Their fleet is mostly small vessels. We will crush them. On the Ironwool, Admiral Yuna surveyed the battlefield. The colony was already damaged, but the shelters seemed intact. The civilians were still alive. There was still time. All ships, this is Admiral Yuna. She spoke into the fleet communication channel. The enemy outnumbers our capital ships, but that is not important. We are humans. We are Deathworlders. We have survived worse odds on our own planet before we even discovered fire. Today, we show these aliens what that means. Across the fleet, soldiers cheered. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Gunners powered up their weapons. The humans were ready for war. Lieutenant Minho, Yuna said, take your squadron and engage their fighters. Keep them away from our main ships. Yes, Admiral, Minho responded. He was already in his fighter, a small but deadly ship called the Falcon. His squadron of 30 pilots followed him as he launched from the Stormbreaker. The space around Hana 7 became a storm of fire and metal. Human fighters clashed with Velrath interceptors. Laser beams cut through the darkness. Missiles exploded in bright flashes. Ships spun and dodged and destroyed each other. Minho was in the center of it all. His hands moved across his controls with perfect precision. He had trained for this his entire life. Every simulation, every exercise, every drill had prepared him for this moment. A Velrath fighter appeared in front of him. Minho pulled the trigger. His weapons tore through the alien ship and exploded in a ball of fire. Another enemy came from his left. He spun his fighter and destroyed that one too. "Two down," he said calmly. "Keep formation, everyone. Watch each other's backs." The Varith pilots were confused. They had expected the humans to be slow and clumsy. Instead, these small creatures were flying with incredible skill and aggression. They attacked without hesitation. They took risks that seemed insane. They refused to retreat, even when outnumbered. One Velrith pilot managed to hit Minho's ship. The damage was serious. Warning lights flashed. Smoke filled the cockpit. Any other species would have turned back, tried to survive. Minho kept fighting. "Lieutenant, your ship is damaged," his wingman called out. "You need to return to the carrier." "Not yet," Minho replied. "I can still fly. I can still fight." He pushed his damaged fighter forward, chasing down enemy ships, destroying them one by one. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His lungs burned from the smoke. But he did not stop. This was what it meant to be a Deathworlder. On the ground, the situation was different. Velrith soldiers had started landing on the surface of HFY 7. They were tall and strong, each one carrying heavy weapons. They expected to simply walk into the colony and take what they wanted. Taiho and his security team were waiting. The first group of Velrith soldiers walked into the colony center. They saw the burned buildings and the empty streets. They thought the humans had run away. Then the shooting started. Taiho and his team attacked from hidden positions. Their old rifles could not penetrate the Velrith armor easily, but they aimed for the weak points, joints, eyes, the gaps between armor plates. Velrith soldiers began falling. "They are fighting back," one Velrith commander shouted in surprise. "But they are civilians. They should be running." They were not running. They were fighting with everything they had. A Velrith soldier grabbed one of Taiho's men, a young officer named Junho. The alien was twice his size. It should have been an easy kill. But Junho did not surrender. He pulled out a knife and stabbed the alien in its eye. The Velrith screamed and dropped him. Junho, bleeding and injured, picked up his rifle and kept shooting. Commander Korath watched the battle reports with growing anger. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be a quick victory. Instead, his fighters were being destroyed by human pilots who fought like demons. His ground soldiers were taking heavy losses from a handful of defenders. What is wrong with these creatures? He demanded. Why won't they die? His officers had no answer. Back in space, the main fleet battle was turning. Admiral Yuna had positioned her ships perfectly. The human vessels were smaller, but they were faster and more agile. They worked together like a single organism, covering each other, attacking in waves, never giving the enemy a moment to rest. The Velrith fought back with everything they had. Their big ships had powerful weapons. They destroyed several human vessels. But for every human ship they killed, they lost 2 of their own. "Admiral," Captain Dongwu reported, "enemy losses are at 30%. Our losses are at 15%. We are winning." Yuna nodded, but her face remained serious. "It is not over yet. Keep the pressure on. Do not give them time to reorganize." Below, on the planet's surface, Taiho received news that lifted his heart. Reinforcements were coming. Captain Sahi and her ground forces were landing to support the colony defense. "Hold on," Taiho told his exhausted team. "Help has arrived." They had been fighting for hours. Many were wounded. Some had died. But they had held. Against all odds, they had survived until help came. In the sky above, Minho finally returned to the carrier. His ship was barely holding together. He had destroyed 11 enemy fighters. When he climbed out of his cockpit, his legs nearly gave out beneath him. Medics rushed to help him. "Lieutenant, You should not have kept flying, the doctor said while treating his wounds. Minho smiled weakly. I am human. We are stubborn like that. The doctor shook his head but smiled back. Yes, you are. The battle for Hana 7 was not over yet. But the tide was turning. The Velrith had expected an easy victory. They had found something very different. They had found the Deathworlders. Admiral Yuna was sleeping when the alarm woke her. She opened her eyes instantly. After 30 years in the military, her body had learned to go from deep sleep to full alert in less than a second. She sat up in her bed and looked at the red light flashing on her wall. That light meant only one thing. An SOS beacon. She grabbed her uniform and dressed quickly. Her quarters on the warship Ironwill were small but comfortable. She had everything she needed. A bed, a desk, a window that showed the endless stars outside. She had spent most of her adult life on ships like this one. The stars were her home now. Yuna was 52 years old, but she moved like someone much younger. Her body was strong and lean. Her hair was short and gray. Her eyes were dark and sharp. She had a long scar on her left cheek from a battle 20 years ago. She had won that battle. She had won every battle she had ever fought. She walked quickly through the corridors of the Ironwill. The ship was huge, carrying 5,000 soldiers and hundreds of weapons. It was one of the most powerful warships in the human fleet. But Yuna knew that power meant nothing without good leadership. That was why she was here. That was why her soldiers followed her without question. She entered the command center. Her officers were already there, gathered around the main screen. They turned and saluted when they saw her. Report, Yuna said. Captain Dongu stepped forward. He was her second in command, a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm face. He had served with her for 15 years. She trusted him completely. We received an SOS signal 7 minutes ago, Dongwu said. It came from Colony Hana 7 in the Outer Territories. The signal indicates a Velrith attack. A large fleet, maybe 100 ships. Yuna looked at the screen. It showed a map of the galaxy with a small red dot marking Hana 7's location. The colony was far away, almost at the edge of human space. It would take time to reach it. How many people in that colony? Yuna asked. 15,000 civilians, Dongwu answered. Mostly farmers and scientists. They have no military ships. Only a small security team. Yuna was quiet for a moment. 15,000 innocent people. Families. Children. They were about to face 100 Velrith warships with nothing but hope and courage. How long to reach them? She asked. At maximum speed, 6 hours. 6 hours. Yuna did her calculations in her head. If the Velrith arrived in 3 hours, that meant the colony would have to survive alone for at least 3 more hours before help came. It was a long time. Too long. But Yuna had seen humans survive impossible situations before. She had seen wounded soldiers fight for days without food or water. She had seen civilians protect their children against enemies 10 times stronger. Humans were stubborn. They did not know how to give up. Send the order to all ships in the Deathworlders fleet, Yuna commanded. Full mobilization. We are going to Hana 7. Her communication officer, a young woman named Yunji, began sending the message. Within minutes, the order spread across 12 sectors of space. Human warships everywhere received the call. The Deathworlders fleet was not a normal military force. It was made of the toughest, strongest, most experienced soldiers humanity had. Every member had trained on Earth, the Deathworld. They had survived hurricanes, earthquakes, diseases, and predators. They had learned to fight in freezing cold and burning heat. They had been pushed beyond their limits again and again. Other alien species could not understand it. How could anyone survive on a planet like Earth? The gravity alone would crush most aliens. The bacteria would kill them in hours. The weather would destroy their cities. The animals would eat them. But humans had not just survived. They had become the dominant species on that deadly world. They had conquered every environment, every challenge, every enemy. They had become the most adaptable, most resilient, most dangerous species in the galaxy. And now that species was going to war. Across the galaxy, human warships changed course. On the carrier ship Stormbreaker, Commander Hyjin woke his fighter pilots and told them to prepare their weapons. On the destroyer Nightfall, Captain Sujin ordered her crew to battle stations. On the troop transport Unbreakable, 2,000 ground soldiers began checking their armor and guns. The fleet grew as more ships joined. 10 ships, 20, 50, 100. By the time they reached HANA 7, there would be over 200 human warships ready for battle. Admiral Yuna watched the fleet come together on her screen. Each ship was a light, a beacon of hope moving through the darkness of space. She felt pride growing in her chest. These were her people, her soldiers. They had answered the call without hesitation. Lieutenant Minho appeared at her side. He was young, only 25, but he was already one of the best pilots in the fleet. He had fast reflexes and steady hands. More importantly, he had the heart of a warrior. He never panicked, never gave up, never stopped fighting until the enemy was destroyed. "Admiral," Minho said, "my squadron is ready. We can launch as soon as we arrive." Yuna nodded. "Good. The Vorith have never fought humans in a real battle. They think we are weak because we are small and soft compared to them. They do not understand that size means nothing. What matters is will. What matters is heart." "We will show them," Minho said. His eyes were burning with determination. Double quotes, "Yes, we will." Meanwhile, on the Volrith flagship, Admiral Karath was feeling very pleased with himself. He stood on his command deck and watched his fleet approach. Colony HAN 7, 100 warships against a tiny settlement with no defenses. It would be a quick and easy victory. Karath was tall, even for a Volrith. He had gray skin covered in battle scars. His forearms were thick with muscle. He had conquered 12 worlds in his career. He had killed thousands of enemies with his own hands. He feared nothing. "Admiral," one of his officers said, "the humans have sent a distress signal. They are calling for help." Korath laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "Let them call. No help will arrive in time. By the time their pathetic fleet reaches this place, the colony will be ash, and we will be gone." His officers laughed with him. They had all heard stories about humans. Small, fragile creatures with soft skin and weak bones. They needed machines to survive in space. They died easily from wounds that Volrith soldiers would ignore. They were nothing to fear. "Begin the attack as soon as we arrive," Korath ordered. "Destroy their buildings. Capture anyone who survives. They will make good slaves." The Volrith fleet continued forward, confident and proud. They did not know that 200 human warships were now racing toward them at maximum speed. They did not know that Admiral Yuna was studying their formation, planning her attack. They did not know that Lieutenant Minho was preparing his fighter squadron for battle. They did not know what a Deathworlder was. They would learn soon enough. Back on the Ironwool, Yuna looked at the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, 15,000 people were counting on her. A man named Taiho had pressed a button and trusted that help would come. She would not let him down. "Increase speed to maximum," she ordered. "We have people to save." The Ironwill roared through space, leading a fleet of death toward the enemy. The humans were coming, and they were bringing war with them. The morning sun rose over Colony HANA 7, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Commander Taiho stood on the observation deck of the colony's main building. He held a cup of coffee in his hand and watched the farmers begin their work in the fields below. It was a peaceful morning. Like every other morning on this small human settlement, Hana 7 was not a big colony. Only 15,000 people lived here. Most of them were farmers, scientists, and their families. They had come to this distant planet to build a new life, far away from the crowded cities of Earth. The planet was quiet and green. The air was clean. Children played in the streets without fear. It was, in many ways, a perfect place to live. Taiho was a retired military officer. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years before coming to Hana 7. Now his job was simple. He managed the colony's small security team and made sure everyone was safe. It was an easy job. Nothing bad ever happened on Hana 7. That was about to change. His communicator beeped. Taiho looked at the small device on his wrist. It was a message from Ji-woo, his young assistant who worked in the communication center. "Commander, you need to come here. Now, something strange is happening." Taiho put down his coffee and walked quickly to the communication center. It was a small building near the center of the colony. When he entered, he saw Ji-woo sitting at her desk. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "What is it?" Taiho asked. Ji-woo pointed at her screen. "Look at this, sir. Our long-range sensors picked up something. Ships. Many ships. They are coming toward us." Taiho leaned forward and looked at the screen. His blood turned cold. The screen showed a fleet of alien warships. He counted them quickly. 50. No, more than 50. Maybe 100 ships, all moving in perfect formation toward their small colony. "Volrath," Taiho whispered. The Volrath were an alien empire that controlled a large part of the galaxy. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They believed they were the most powerful species in the universe. They looked at other races like insects, weak, unimportant, easy to crush. Humans had met the Volrath 10 years ago. The meeting did not go well. The Volrath saw humans as just another weak species to conquer. But so far, there had been no war. The Volrath had been busy fighting other enemies. They had left humans alone until now. "How long until they arrive?" Taiho asked. 3 hours, Ji-woo said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, what do we do? We have no warships. We have no army. We only have 50 security officers and some old weapons." Taiho stood straight. His mind was racing. He thought about the 15,000 people in the colony. The children. The families. They were all depending on him. He had to do something. "Sound the alarm," he said. "Tell everyone to go to the underground shelters. Now." Ji-woo pressed a button. A loud siren began to wail across the colony. People stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Parents grabbed their children. Workers dropped their tools. Everyone began running toward the shelters. Taiho walked to a locked cabinet on the wall. He entered a code and opened it. Inside was a small red device. It was old and covered in dust. In his 20 years in the military, he had never seen anyone use one of these devices. He had hoped he would never have to use it either. It was the SOS beacon. This beacon would send a signal across the galaxy. It would reach the Deathworlders fleet, the most powerful and feared human military force in existence. These were soldiers who had trained on Earth, a planet that the rest of the galaxy considered a nightmare. A death world. Earth was not like other planets. Its gravity was crushing. Its weather was violent. Its animals were deadly. Diseases could kill in days. Humans had evolved on this terrible world. They had become strong, tough, and stubborn. They could survive things that would kill any other species in minutes. The Deathworlders fleet was made of the strongest of these humans. They were soldiers who had fought in the worst conditions imaginable. They never gave up. They never surrendered. They were the galaxy's worst nightmare. But calling them was not a small thing. The beacon was only for the most desperate situations. Once activated, it could not be stopped. The fleet would come, and they would come ready for war. Taiho looked at the beacon in his hand. He thought about the Velrith ships coming toward his colony. He thought about the people hiding in the shelters below. He thought about Jiwoo, who was watching him with wide, frightened eyes. He pressed the button. The beacon made a soft humming sound. A small green light began to blink. The signal was sent. Somewhere, far across the galaxy, humans were receiving his call for help. "It is done," Taiho said. "Now we wait." Outside, the sky was still beautiful. The sun was still shining. But Taiho knew that in 3 hours, that sky would be filled with alien warships. The Velrith were coming, and they were confident of victory. They had never fought humans before. They did not know what they were about to face. Taiho gathered his security team. There were only 50 of them, but they were all former soldiers. They knew how to fight. They knew how to survive. "Listen to me," Taiho said. "The Velrith are coming. They think we are weak. They think they will crush us easily. But they are wrong. We are human. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We fight until the end." His team nodded. Their faces were serious, but not afraid. They were humans, born on a death world. Fear was just another enemy to defeat. "Our job is to protect the civilians until help arrives," Taiho continued. "The fleet is coming. We just need to hold on. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." They shouted together. Taiho smiled. It was a grim smile, but it was real. The Velrith had no idea what they were walking into. They saw a small, defenseless colony. They saw easy prey. They did not see the fire burning in human hearts. They did not understand that humans never stopped fighting. They did not know about the fleet of Deathworlders racing across the stars to answer the call. The Velrith were confident of victory. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 hours. Taiho looked at the sky one more time. The peaceful morning was over. War was coming. But so was help. Somewhere out there, Admiral Yuna and her fleet had received his signal. They were coming. And when they arrived, the Velrith would learn why the galaxy feared the humans of Earth. Taiho walked toward the shelters. He had a colony to protect and a battle to prepare for. The invasion had begun.